It was a gruesome discovery at this fence. Late Wednesday afternoon,
21-year-old Matthew Shepard was found beaten
by some queer bar somewhere. By some queer meeting, not over here.
Shepard was gay.
And we're here to take our stand, and it seems me.
For the attack.
Wyoming
That's the Cowboys thing.
Everybody.
Shaping up
The only reason you guys protest him because he's gay.
homosexual propaganda.
On November 14th, 1998, the members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries by the members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Perotti.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this.
I was born and raised here. My grandparents, they moved here in the early 1900s, and we basically my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a great place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out and spaced apart, because, well, it's how far they could go without having the trains, without having to stop and refuel or rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection. Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is your old-time traditional people. They've been here for a while. Laramie's been the main hub where they stop to get supplies.
Stewardship is one thing all of our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Ingen, rancher.
So you have to take care of your land, and if you ruin it, then you lose your living.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate, the coals and the wind. You know, they say the Wyoming wind, it'll drive a man insane, but it doesn't bother me. Well, sometimes it bothers me, but most time it don't.
Then you have the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of larger cities.
Philip DeBlois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there. You'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids play out after dark. And here, in the summertime, I let my kids play out past 11 o'clock and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at the most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go there. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like trains too. They don't bother me. Well, sometimes they bother me, but most time they don't. Even though a guy won't go every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everyone in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle in trains. Now all they carry are diapers and cars.
I'm from Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie's a lot better than where I grew up, I'll give it that.
It's a great place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, well, a lot of press people came out here, and this one time they followed me up to the crime scene, and it was a gorgeous day, absolutely gorgeous day. The sky was that blue, you know, you'll never be able to paint, just that real sky blue, and the clouds and everything, and this reporter, a lady person, well, she said,
"Well, who found the boy? Who was out there anyway?"
And I said, well, it's a great place, running and mountain biking, horseback riding is really big out there. And she was like,
who in the hell would want to run out here?
And I'm like, lady, you're missing the whole point. All you gotta do is turn around, look at the mountains, look at the sky. And she was just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged, I just felt like she was stupid. They're missing the whole point. They're missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have said that Laramie is a beautiful town. Secluded enough you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community, everyone knows everyone. And a town with a personality most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I would say Laramie's become a town defined by an incident or a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper, we're just a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of it, but it will sure take a while.
Today,
the victim
2
of what
young
many
men,
people say
Russell
was a hate
Henderson
crime in
and
Wyoming
Aaron
this morning,
McKinney,
has
listed in
died.
obscenity,
21-year-old
came into court
Matthew
with
Shepard
charge.
was found beaten.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice, and when I asked what it was all about, he said he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belger.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronich.
I've just never done anything like this before in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries a cell phone. I've made preliminary contact with Rebecca Hilliker, the head of the University of Wyoming's theater department. She's promised to host us a party on our first night there and promises we will meet potential interviewees.
I must tell you, when I first heard that you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you have just kicked me in the stomach. Why would you do this to me? And then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and decided that we've been through so much negative closure about this whole thing. And the students really need to talk. When this first happened, they started talking about it. And then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers. You may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic I have with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student that I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I mean, I've lived in Wyoming, well, my whole life. The family has been in Wyoming, well, for generations. Now, when it came time for me to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to go. But I wanted to study theater, and I knew if I was going to get a scholarship, I would need to get a scholarship in order to get to college. And so they hold this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew if I placed first place in duets, that I would be able to get that scholarship. So I marched out to the university just looking for some good scenes. And I saw one of the professors, and I was like, I need a killer scene. And he goes, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. And so I read it, and I knew I could win best scene if I did a good enough job. And when the time came to tell my parents, now you have to understand, my parents go to everything, every baseball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And when I told my mom and dad, they led me to the room, and they sat me down, and they said if I did that scene, that they wouldn't come to see me in the competition. Because they believed it was wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They felt that strongly about that. They didn't want to see their son do probably the most important thing he had done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I never ever got against my parents' wishes, so I was kind of worried. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember was, when we finished, my senior partner and I, we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. It was amazing. And we took first place, and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be at this university because of that scene. It was the best moment of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to say that is the one thing they didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I could give is, well, I wanted to win. I mean, it was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Company member Greg Perotti.
We arrived in Denver today and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange the Wyoming sign said, Wyoming, like no place on earth, instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Kondakowski. I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and yes, Debbie Reynolds was big then, so there are a lot of us around. But I promise, I won't slap if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Harris. We arrived in Laramie tonight and just passed the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we'd be on any named drag in America. Fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we drove past the University Inn, on the sign were amenities such as heated pool or cable TV, or usually touted it said,
Hate is not a Laramie value.
Greg Perotti.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up. Well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
I mean, there's more land. You could keep a pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, just a little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were at school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close.
Then that's their problem.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In my all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey, why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So, this is a big ranching town, right?
Oh, no, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time. Before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha, so now it's just drop-through spot for the railroad. Because, what was it? In the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop they could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep. She washed engines. Her name was Minnie. They used to sing that song to her. You know that song?
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
Well, I'll tell you. Wyoming is bad as a turn of jobs. I mean, the university has these big, high whoop-de-woo jobs, but in Wyoming, unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of the people work in minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've either been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now, here in Laramie, there's a difference. And there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's all about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't just get educated. That's why I told you before, my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's fact.
But here in Laramie, if we weren't in the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you've got on your tape now. Boy, you're getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me just ask you, what was your reaction when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I'd just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one, if they had been in a bar situation, they had been drinking, they might actually smack one in the mouth, but then they just walk away. Most of them said they just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say that Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even one to say. And we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Well, we haven't really decided yet, but, we're gonna try and bring it back around to Laramie, actually.
Okay, then. There are parts I won't tell you.
Now, the government will use this opportunity, just like the state of Wyoming has used this opportunity, and the gay activists, to get this hate crime bill in. I think it's stupid that we want to pass a hate crime law when killing is killing. My life is as important as anybody's life. Your life is as important as anybody's life. What makes a gay person or a black person or a minority any more important than anyone else in this world?
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met with someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Seeger, owner of a coffee shop, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come to my shop. That's how I know him.
It was the first time I heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard. He said, "Can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who. Matthew Shepard, you know. He's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds, tops. They say it was 110, but I wouldn't believe him. They also said he was 5'5" in the papers, but this man, he was really only about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So anyhow, he comes up to the window. You know, I'm going to try and go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he comes up to the window and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" He says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me just anything. My name is Matt and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I say, "No, how are you paying?" The fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and neither does Wyoming for that matter, so he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? Always was, but I liked him because he was straightforward. Maybe gay, but straightforward. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, How does any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
I never did actually call him Matthew. Actually, most of the time, we just called him Choo Choo. You know, because we called him Matt Choo, and then we just called him Choo Choo. But whenever I think of Matthew, I just think of his incredible beaming smile. You know, he'd walk into a room and he'd just be like, and he'd smile at everyone. He made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit at the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if somebody was sitting there, he would just stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him, too. You know, that's what his whole big thing was watching CNN and MSNBC. Those are the only channels I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was really smart with political affairs and stuff, but not so much with common sense. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so, this shyness, mousiness, gave way to a person who was excited about this track he was going to embark on. You know, he was just figuring out wanting to do human rights, how he was going to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was just starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did speak with Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. He told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and he was enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. He was just totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and the tragedy of this.
Well, let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know it. I know it for a fact. They're not the usual, like the queens, the gay people, queens, the runaround faggot type. No, they're more of the throw bail, hey, jump on a horse and brand them. You know, as I always say, don't fuck with the Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. No, because I know a lot of gay people. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years, and honestly, I don't think my own people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's what I just said. It doesn't matter. If 8 men and 1 woman walk into a bar, which is often the case, I want you to think, who's getting what? You see, it doesn't take big intellectual to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came to Laramie is that I was the first out gay or lesbian faculty member. And that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. At my interview, they asked me what my husband did, so I came out then. Do you want to hear a funny story? When you first moved to Laramie as a new faculty member, there are all these things you have to do. I remember one time I was sitting in my office when this woman called. I thought it was a health insurance phone call or something, so I called her back. I could hear her. She was at her keyboard clicking away, and so I said, "Hello, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call." And then she said, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre. And then she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are." And I was like, uh-huh. And then she said, "I hear you came here as a couple. I'm one too, not a couple, just a person." And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. But then she said there were other lesbians who wouldn't want to be seen with me. That I would irreparably taint them. That just being seen with me would be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Soniker.
But I kept telling myself that people should live where they want to live. And there'd be times I'd go down to Denver and go to gay bars, and people would ask me where I'm from. And I'd say Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there from Wyoming. So many men who'd say, "How can I live there? I have to get out. I can't live there." But every once in a while, there'd be a guy. "Oh gosh, I really miss Laramie. I mean, that's where I really want to live." And he'd just get this starry-eyed look and stare off in his face. And I'd say, "Hey, man, if that's where you really want to live, then go for it." I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done.
Today we move from our hotel to a Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Gronich.
Today we were divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given Baptist church. We were welcomed into the service by the Reverend himself, standing near the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of the sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I often tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now, scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 to 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? Now, the Bible tells me human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen B. Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town? Baptists, Mormon, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, you know. They're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
Here, we do things a little differently that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical leader of the Mormon Church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't believe that it happened and some folks wrote about it in the Bible. We believe that God still speaks to man today. The prophet of the church is able to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be, on the left side of the panel, so far left that I'm probably sitting there by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by large humanists. Many of them are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to the right on the spectrum, to his credit, is Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him, for he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
When we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved. And we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we were going to stand here and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We were supposed to stand out as leaders. And I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and it is one of our jobs to find out what those boundaries are. So we study our scriptures and we look to our leaders. And once we find out what those boundaries are, we learn what is out of bounds. A proclamation has been set about a family. The family is defined as a man, a woman, and children. That's about as clear as I can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church. No leniency. It's just the way it is.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It is all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible, just as the rest of the world. It says here in the Bible, and most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist. The Bible does not need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around Tumbleweed Cement Factory and said, "The hell am I doing in Wyoming?" 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Wyoming.
Shepard was gay, and while police say robbery was the primary motive for the attack, gay rights groups call it a hate crime. Shepard remained on life support at a Colorado hospital until this morning.
And you're wrong. He's a human being. It don't matter. God loves everybody. Well, you just told another lie.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaydah Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life here in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people will say things to me like, "Why do you wear that thing on your head?" Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know? So I'll be like, "It's part of my religion." And then they'll be like, and this is the worst part, because they'll be like, "I know it's part of your religion, but why?" Like, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing here with my pop and chips, you know? Yeah, it's just so unreal to me that, you're going to be in New York writing a play about Laramie. You're going to be writing a play about my town. You're going to be on stage, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello? Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronich, and I'm here in Laramie working with the theater company. I went to the Reverend, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was really interested in speaking with him about some of his thoughts on recent events.
I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle, if you know what I mean. And he was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh yes, I really understand. It must have been just horrible.
Yes, I think we are all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think possibly maybe I could call back and speak with your husband later, just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we talked to was Matt Nicholson, the owner.
My great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louisa Grammar Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. That's why Wyoming is known as the equality state. So what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a gift shop. I want to have a pool hall and do all that shit. You know, every night's ladies' night.
What about the night Matthew Shepard was there?
We had karaoke that night. 20 or 30 people came in. Matthew Shepard was sitting right here where he was sitting, just hanging out. You know, if you want to talk to someone, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Alright, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get over with, but it will be everything, factual. Alright, here we go. So I clock in, 10 o'clock, usual time, Tuesday nights, 10:30, Matthew Shepard comes in. Alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Philip Reed, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken. Heineken, even though you have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matt? Well, if you had a bar with 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been in. And nothing to do with sexual orientation, just politeness, mannerisms, absolute manners. Just taking care of me, as in tips, clean cut. Some people, you know, just comes in and offers intelligence within their vocabulary. So he kicks it here. Didn't seem like he was worried about anything or looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Approximately 11:30, 11:45, 11:30, Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney came in the bars. I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused, they're the perps. They came in very stone-faced, very rude, dirty, grungy, gimme. They came in and, as you know, they paid for a pitcher of beer with dimes and quarters, which is, it's just something you don't forget, you know? $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. So, they take their beer back with them in the pool room, and they didn't seem intoxicated at all. And they come out about 30 minutes later, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one, because they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I have a real good bet they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew. You know, because he came from a lot of it. He would like to hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing to him. His shoes might have meant something, and they can say it was a robbery, but I don't buy it. Not even for an iota of a second.
A few moments later, I looked over, and Matthew was sitting with Aaron and Russell.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and that he wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
He said that is, when he and Russ went to the bathroom, they decided to pretend that they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, they stated that Matthew approached them, and I absolutely 100% disbelieve and refute that statement. Refute it. I'll tell you why. Number one, character reference. Why would he approach them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar. He didn't approach me. Hello? They said he was a gay. They say he's a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that. I don't believe it. Two, territorialism is the word I will use for this, and that's that Matt was sitting there. And Russell and Aaron were in the pool area. Upon their first interaction, they were there, the area that Matt had been seen all night. Who approached who at that?
But Matthew was the type of person, like, he would never not talk to anybody for any reason. You know, if somebody started talking to him, he would just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had a problem striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was alone at the bar that night without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
And this is basically what I'm testifying to because I'm the key eyewitness in this case. I'm testifying that I saw Matt leave. And I saw two people leave with him, and I did not see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. And at the same time, Russell and Aaron were nowhere to be seen. You do the math.
Actually, I think that the DJ was the last one to talk to him on his way out. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt before he left the fight or something. I was just bullshitting around with my shit when he stopped. No, I stopped him actually, and he was like, "Hey, Shadow, ... And I was like, "What, man? You getting ready to leave?" And he was like, "Yeah, man," and this and that. So, you know, you see the two guys. They were just standing there, you know, so you could see them, and they were looking back at him, and he was looking over at them. So, I guess I got to stand and talk to Matt for like a good 10 or so minutes, and you seen the guys with you seen them like you seen them worried, like anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was a black truck, a small truck, but the three of them sat in the front and Matt sat in the middle, and I didn't think anything of it, you know. I didn't figure them guys was going to be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Yeah, I've known Aaron a long time. He was a good kid. That's why I was so surprised when I heard about this. Now, he'd been living out far at his trailer house, he told me, with his girl. And, you know, they just started dating last summer, and they must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, because they had a kid. He was only 21 years old and running around with a kid. But, you know, that's the kind of person Aaron was. He was always wearing big clothes like Tommy Hilfiger and Polo and Gucci. And he was always trying to act big and act tough, act cool. But, you know, you could get in his face about it. And he'd back down like he was some scared kid.
Sherry Edinson. Russell was just so sweet. You know, he was the one who was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just so quiet and sweet. So, of course, it surprised me. And I know people snap and whatever, and we didn't have a real intimate relationship. I mean, I was just his landlord. We did work together the truck wagon, too. And I remember, like, at the Christmas party, he was totally drunk out of his mind. And we were all pretty much party time, and he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. He was still the same old meek Russell. But I remember him like coming up to me and saying, "Sherry, when you get a chance, can I have a dance?" We never did get around to that dance. But now I just want to shake him, you know? I mean, what were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, it's a very powerful, personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty, and you can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, with that view up there isolated, and the God, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew Shepard's, brought us down on the fence today. Broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship towards this young man. On the way back, I made sure nobody saw me cry.
Greg was crying on the way back. I felt the same way, but I couldn't bring myself to tears. I had an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreffels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it today. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off about 5:00 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. Just kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon. And I'm not super familiar with that area, so
on my way back down, I didn't really know where I was going. I was just sort of picking a way to go, which now makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there's no way I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. And I went over the handlebars, and I ended up on the ground. And so, I was getting up, just kind of dusting myself off, and that's when I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. He was just kind of lying there by the fence, I thought it was a scarecrow, seriously. I was like, Halloween's coming up, thought it might be the Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So, I took my bike over to the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and that's when I noticed the hair. And that was a major key to me noticing that it was a human being, was the hair. Because I just thought it was a dummy, seriously. I even noticed the chest going up and down, just thought it was some kind of mechanism. But when I noticed the hair, well, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. And I got in my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny. And lying on his back, he was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in partially dry blood, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, and I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all around him. And the only place that he did not have any blood on him, on his face, was where he appeared to have been crying down his face. His head was distorted. It did not look normal. He looked as if he had a real harsh head wound. I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who've worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but we have some people here who've not worked in a big city hospital, and it's not something you expect here. You expect this kind of injury to come from a car going downhill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that, this horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see injuries like that from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there had been anything I could have done to save him, I would have done it, but there was nothing I could do. I mean, I was yelling at him at the top of my lungs, like, hey, wake up, hello? But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence, thumbs out, in a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom end of a pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and I tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further. Now, your first thought is, well, certainly like to think that it's somebody from out of town that comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But if there's been somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, certainly that is something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us. Yeah, he was bound so tight. I'm sorry. We finally got the knife through there. We rolled him over to his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. Immediately, I put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance got there, we put him on a backboard, put a neck collar on him, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital's emergency room. Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town. So, I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So, I tell Aaron to wait, and I go to treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another room 2 doors down. Now, when we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was beyond our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon at Padre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think. They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him. Then, 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. I mean, they were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, both their bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us. How we're all his kids, our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
After the band and the floats and the hoopla, a quiet reminder that something ugly happened here this week.
We need to get out and show people that there are people that care.
The homecoming parade doubled in size as more joined to make a statement against hate.
It's a terrible crime against a person, no matter if he's black, color, gay, or white. You don't treat people that way.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found out beaten on the prairie, basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know. It's not the student who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled up to me, and they said, I don't know much, but there has been a young man beaten in Laramie, and they say his name is Matthew Shepard. And they said, well, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I call up my sister Trish, and I say, tell me what you know. I'm just like, tell me anything, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story comes up on Channel 5 News. It was just like, boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his name, his age, his description. It was like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
First I hear of it Friday morning, I walk out of class and boom, there it is in the branding iron. So I go out to get a Laramie boomerang because I want more details, but the second I get home, before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me and he's like,
did you hear about what happened?
I go, yes.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I'm like, yes he was.
You need to get down here right now. We gotta talk about this. We gotta discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rule and Stacy at Padre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We've got a kid in from Wyoming, and we think he might be the victim of a hate crime. There are a couple of newspaper reporters here asking a couple of questions. And so we agreed that we needed a spokesperson. CEO, I'll do that. And we'll find out all that we can.
And then that night I watched the 10 o'clock news. And I realized the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
we need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure they were in the bar Tuesday night.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, so I said, I'm just going. It's just around the block. So I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were about 100 people and even more news media by that point. The fact that they were kids, local kids that everyone had some relationship to. And I think what everyone was really waiting on was pins and needles for what the judge's verdict would be. There were about 200 people in the room at this point when they walked in their orange jumpsuits and their shackles. And you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at that point. And then a judge came in with the prosecution, and there's a statement of facts, and a reading of those facts was:
the essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the bar. At the bar, Matthew later confided that he was gay. The subjects then deceived him into getting into their car and driving to a remote location. At said location, they beat him, tortured him, and robbed him. The defendants were later contacted by the police, who found black patent shoes as well as a wallet belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I mean, I don't think there was anybody in the room who wasn't crying by that point. I mean, it lasted only 5 minutes, but it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with:
said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Media, nationally and internationally, and the homosexual community, nationally and internationally, has turned this into a referendum on homosexual rights. Then why don't you go do it in your own town? What's your name? In your own town on TV then. Make it media that way.
What's your name?
How could this happen? I mean, no one really understands. Even I don't understand. Laramie's one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. They could create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment, and my response was pretty catatonic. And not eating, not sleeping. Please don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came out about the sheer brutality of the motivations behind a crime. And then, quite frankly, the media descended and there was no more time left to reflect on it.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Well, Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Anderson came from the poor side of town.
As a gay college student hospitalized in critical condition after severe beating.
People would like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but really it's just an example of what happens in schools daily.
It's a tough business, as Matthew Shepard knew, and as all of his friends know now, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, we're talking herds, hundreds of reporters everywhere in town, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There's news trucks everywhere in town, everywhere on campus, and we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter. These people are like predators. Like, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom and was like asking me questions and stuff. And the judge was like, "Can I please get some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. You know what to do in your press.
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came taped to me, I taped them the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape. In case they ever try to do something funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Gay rights. Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't punished hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
They've got the beginning of the news story where it's like murder in Wyoming and it's all in red, like blood and stuff. And we're all just like, what is this? Sensationalism? I mean, we had the guys in jail in less than 24 hours. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
For
people to say that we're not a good town, and the truth is, the majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples here every once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage. Said this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, Father Willie accused.
Had this been a heterosexual these two boys had taken out Rob, this would never be on national news. Now my son is guilty before he's had a trial.
I do think that the media is holding people somewhat accountable. People are sitting on their couches, watching TV, listening to CNN, watching Dan Rather and thinking, well, Jesus Christ, that's not how it is here. Well, then how is it here?
Matthew Shepard Medical Update, 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
I looked out there, and where there had been 2 were reporters. There were 10 or 15 still photographers, 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. Parents had just barely arrived, and I just barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there, and I thought, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition at 9:15 p.m. October 7th. He was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. These major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to the front of his right ear. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the past 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had difficulties controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from Matthew. First of all, we would like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and fond wishes for Matthew's speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and know that they are something Matthew would appreciate as well. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and so we ask that you please respect our privacy as well as Matthew's, so that we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty, after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with Chief Investigating Officer on the case, Rob Debris, of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I think the thing that bothered me the most was when I went out to Padre Valley where Matthew was, and I think the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies, but this poor boy is sitting here, fighting all his life, trying to make it. I just wanted it so by the book,
I keep seeing this picture in my head of when I found him.
Aaron Krebels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, get it out. And, a big thing is seeing this picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me that I happen to be the one who found him. Because, a big question with me and my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me. having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck did not come after me. But my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
No matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred, and I keep thinking, I should have noticed these guys shouldn't have been sitting next to this guy. I shouldn't have had my head down those 20 seconds when I was washing dishes. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours. You study and study and study, talking to the officers, making sure they understand, talking to the witnesses, and always coming back to, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way they were going to get out of it.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence...
Reggie flew you.
It was just such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves. You know, you put them on, and they kept breaking. So finally, you just ran out of gloves, and you think, don't hesitate. You know, that's what your mind tells you at the time. Don't hesitate. So you keep moving, keep trying to find an airway and help Matthew the best you can.
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there wasn't a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and they said Matthew had HIV. And they said, you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure because you see I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, so my hands had a bunch of open cuts in them, so I was kind of screwed. And you think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get down there. So I got down there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
And they said that that's a medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it could maybe stop your getting the disease.
It's a mean, nasty medicine. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. But maybe we just wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, and two absolutely human beings caused so much grief for so many people. It's been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it really brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's a parent thing, you know, because they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but they don't want you getting hurt.
But like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So I finally said, oh, for God's sake, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn!
They say I'm stubborn, and I don't believe them, but I just think, okay, I've heard your opinion, now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, you know? What are they gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It looked pretty funny, you know? What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I couldn't handle that.
University President Philip Dubois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly, and she said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, the same way that the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the beatings of the Jews and the gypsies and the homosexuals. You've taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters unless and until you acknowledge that Matthew Shepard's beating was not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies. You have Matthew's blood on your hands.
And I just can't begin to tell you what this does to you. I mean, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me and my family and my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, over 5,000 people gathered. And in New York, a political rally ended in civil disobedience with hundreds of arrests. The Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard Medical Update, 9 a.m., Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy and also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things like when I sit in church,
Jedediah Schultz.
and the reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know. I think I'm going through some changes now. I don't think I know certain things about myself to make a decision that says homosexuality is right. I mean, when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. And I guess now I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. Maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And I mean, speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals or anything. I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that at all. I mean, that's not going to be getting in the way of me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay, and yada 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 yada.
Conrad Miller.
Well, if my kids ever asked, I'd set them down and I'd tell them, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? This is the lifestyle. This is the life, okay? And I tell them, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than you think.
Murdoch.
And it doesn't bother anyone because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying that Matthew came on them. You don't pick up regular people. No, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better to know it was partially Matthew's fault and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety. I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere inside, we all knew it could happen to us anytime. I mean, I would be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You just don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
Because, it's even in some of the Western literature. Live and let live. And that is just such crap. So, basically, what it boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm a faggot, you won't beat the crap out of me? How is that supposed to work?
We went to the candle vigil.
And
it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. And I kept saying, I don't deserve to feel this bad, And this guy got up there and he said, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not that kind of town. But it is that kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, why did this happen here? That's totally a lie because it happened here. If it wasn't, it wouldn't have happened here. It's like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. It's totally circular logic. And we have to be sad and we have to mourn this, that we live in a place, a town, a country where shit like this happens. And people are trying to distance themselves from this crime. But we need to own this crime, I feel. We need to own it. Because we are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon and ran into two friends of Erin McKinney, Shannon and Jen. You guys knew Erin well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I don't know whether Erin was fucked up or coming down or what, but Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either, because he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, said the wrong things. And I don't know, I won't lie to you. There was times that I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did. But yeah, it's there. It's easy money.
Erin's done that kind of thing before. They both have. Oh, I remember this time they went down to Cheyenne and came back with maybe $300. I don't know if they ever chose, gay people as their particular targets, but anyone they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
Do you think that there is any homophobia at all involved that contributed to some of it?
Probably. I mean, it probably would have pissed Aaron off that he was gay. Aaron didn't mind gay people as long as they didn't come on to him, as long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of them.
Do you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
I'm sure he knew there were people that are gay. I mean, he worked at KFC, and there was a couple people up there that, yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, I don't know, half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
First of all, I'd ask him if he ever do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good. But I'm sure he is, though. I just want to hang out with him,
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
You guys both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally reserved for nothing more profound than collegiate enthusiasm and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
Well, this is homecoming weekend, and there were a lot of people in town, and there's this homecoming parade that's scheduled for it. And the students decided to tag on to the back of it. Behind the banner supporting Matt, and everyone wearing the armbands the students had created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
My apartment has two opposite windows on two opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south. Now that is exactly the route of the homecoming parade. Now on the day of the parade I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. I was really disappointed because I really wanted to march with the people walking from after me, but I couldn't. So I watched from my window, and it was just, I'm 52 years old and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years and I've seen a lot. I was incredibly moved when I saw the tag at the end of the parade about 100 students walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So the parade went down south the other street to do a U-turn, and I went to my other window to watch it from south down the other street.
I was up front by where they were holding the banner. And let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps for longer in my life. I mean, families, mothers holding their 6-year-old children, tying their armbands around these children, trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. I mean, just absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done.
Well, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the other street. And I noticed the most incredible thing. The number of students walking for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. 500 people walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Can you imagine? And students kept joining in. The tag at the end was larger than the entire parade, and you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face, and I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Well, now, when I first found out, I thought it was just horrible. Nobody deserves to be treated that way. I don't care who you are. It's just that another thing that wasn't brought out is that at the same time that this happened, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man who killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and killed him. And it was just a little piece in the paper. And we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. This guy was brand new on the force. But here's one of ours, and it was just a little piece in the paper. And I think a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as like a saint, making him as like a martyr. And I don't think he was. I just don't think he was that pure. Now I didn't know him, but just with all the things I've found out, it's scary, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things, but just being the kind of person he was really just a barfly. I think he kind of pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Now, everybody's got problems, but why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate them. It has nothing to do with whether you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we're exhausted.
We were to meet Father Roger Schmidt this morning at 7:30. I wanted to skip it altogether, but we had to follow through to the end. So, here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. Do you realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. No, I'm not just going to sit here and say I was this bold guy. No fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in the community when this happened. And I thought, should we call out the bishop and ask his permission to do the vigil? And then I was like, hell no. His permission doesn't make it correct. No, I'm not knocking bishops, but what's correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. Say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think that violence is what they did to Matthew. They did do violence to Matthew. But every time you were called a fag, or you were called a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke, yes, dyke. Do you realize that that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you were to use anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to understand that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was in there. I was in jail with Darren in December. Got thrown in over Christmas. Assault and battery, 2 counts. Don't want to talk about it. We were in there, eating our Christmas dinner, got my little bit of stuffing, my motherfucking bread, my little roll. And I turned to Aaron and I'm like, hey, homie, tell me something, please. Why Let me think how I worded this. Why did you kill a faggot if you were just going to be destined to be a faggot later? You know what I mean? I mean, think about it. He's either going to get humped a lot or he's going to die. So why would you do that? I just don't understand why he would do that. And you know what he says to me? Honest to God, this is what he said. He goes, he tried to grab my dick. He's dumb, dog. He didn't even try to act like it was nothing. I heard they were auctioning those boys off. Up in the Max ward, you know, where the killers go. I heard that when they found out that Aaron was coming to prison, they were auctioning him off. I want him to put aside 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I were those two boys.
Hello?
Reverend?
Yes, hello?
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did. And let me tell you, I'm not sure that I wish to speak to anybody about what's happened. I am somewhat involved. I just don't know that...
Oh, yes, I completely understand. And I really don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to the service on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind. And that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. But now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. The girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, as for those two boys, the accused, they have forfeited their lives. We've been after them for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. And now one boy's on suicide watch, and I'm working with him. And until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I believe they deserve the death penalty, but I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, Matthew Shepard, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that as Matthew Shepard was tied to that fence, that he had time to reflect on a moment when someone spoke the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
It was about 11:30 that night. I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. So I quickly got dressed and I came in. And I went into the ICU where the family was. And Judy came up to me and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her. And we just stood there. Honestly, for like 10 minutes. Just, because what else do you do? Then we had to talk about how, Dennis, this is now public knowledge. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell the world this has happened. Because at this point, it was clear to us that it was the world. It was the whole world. So, Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out there at 4 o'clock.
Matthew Shepard medical update. 4:30 a.m. Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight, Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. 12:53 a.m. Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make the decision regarding whether or not to keep their son on life support. Like a good son, he was caring until the end and removed all guilt and stress from the family. He came into this world premature and left this world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Go home. Give your kids a hug. Don't let the day go by without telling them that you love them." I don't know how that would happen. It broke down on national television. I don't know. He had been up for like 72 hours and gone home and got 30 minutes of sleep. And then had to get up and come back in again. And in a moment of complete brain deadness, I just thought about my own 4 daughters. Go home and hug your kids. And she doesn't have her kid anymore. And I was just thinking, this is so lame. And then we started to get letters and emails. And most of them were generally very kind. But I did get this one. Mr. Stacy, do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients or just the faggots? And as I've said before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle, which I agree with. But having been thrown into this, I guess I just never really understood the magnitude with which some people hate. Most of the letters were generally very kind and compassionate. And Matthew was kind and compassionate until the end.
I spoke with Doc today and told him we would soon be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney, and this is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what. If they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about them. Because he wouldn't want those 2 to die. No, he'd want to leave them with hope. Hope. Just like how the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. This whole thing, you see, this whole thing revolves around hope. Hope.
Why here, though? Why now?
Because this is an opportunity that you have to continue to stand against wickedness.
For Matthew Shepard's family, don't you think that taking this stand here at this time, not saying that you shouldn't protest when you want to protest, but wouldn't that be hurtful for them?
I think this mother and these parents need to face reality. They didn't raise him right. They didn't teach him right. And the Bible said a child left himself brings his mother to shame. Proverbs 29:15. He lived like he died. He died in shame. He lived in shame. He died in shame. And his parents ought to be ashamed. They ought to be ashamed to even identify him as a Christian. It's a shame to even have his funeral in this church house over here. Regardless of whether I agree with the Episcopals or not, they shouldn't even have it in that church house. They should have it at some queer bar somewhere or some queer meeting somewhere, not over here.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad, just big, huge, wet snowflakes, and there were hundreds of people just dressed in black and umbrellas everywhere. And I remember when I got there was one church for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and then there was another one for everyone else who wanted to be there. And still there were tons of people outside, and there was this park over by the churches, and that's where these people were. And the park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm they've ever had.
Tiffany Edwards.
And like trees were falling down and the power went out for a couple of days. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this must be like the power of the universe. You know what I mean? Like whatever higher spirits control the wind were like blowing in the storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral
Carrie Drake, Casper Star Tribute.
is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas, that scene going in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible. You stand over there ignorant for two times it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at the people in the protest. The Fred Phelps people, and then across the street you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember this skinhead coming over, and he was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. And he was coming from across the street where the protests were, and I just thought, oh, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But instead he comes over and starts leading the people in Amazing Grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different. Because the fags are bringing us out and are trying to make Matthew Shepard look like the gay poster boy of the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the two perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the Alameda County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
That perfect attribute of God.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew Shepard's funeral, I decided that someone needed to stand toe to toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think as much as talking about hatred in the nation right now, someone needs to show there's a better way of dealing with this kind of hatred. So our ideas to just look like angels. And we have these angel outfits with these big ass wings. And our idea is to encircle Phelps. There'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels, and because of our big wings, we're gonna completely block him. And so this big band of angels come in, and we don't say a fucking word, we just stand there. And we're a group of people bringing forth a message of love and peace and compassion, and we're calling it angel action. Because, yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers lay their hands on me, it's called an ordination. And then they deliver a charge. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry loud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to go and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view. He was going to be pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all of my angels' earplugs.
The court is in session. All rise.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Dagger.
You know, when they started jury selection, everybody was coming to my shop with, I don't want to be in this trial, I hope they don't call me. Or, oh my god, I've been called, how do I get off? Just wanted to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be part of this jury. And then I heard Henderson was going to have to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they asked is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understood that a lot of the answers were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would.
Indeed.
Yes, sir, I would.
Well, can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror.
No problem.
You entered a non-guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand that today you wish to change that plea. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand that the recommended life sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand, Mr. Henderson, that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
I will now ask you how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether the sentence will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand that there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt made from a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson. As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following words. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers, as we know your pain will never go away. You have showed us such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, Your Honor, we humbly plead, do not take Russell out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Is there anything you would like to say?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. and Mr. Shepherd, there isn't a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did. I greatly regret what I did. And I hope that one day you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was very wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did. And I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing fully well that he was there, and perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder whether you really understand the gravity of this situation. The court finds it appropriate, therefore the sentence be ordered as follows. As on count 3, felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive, the sentence for count 3.
After the hearing, you spoke of Russell Henderson's Mormon relationship.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years now. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. And I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so you can imagine when this happened. You can just imagine disbelief. And after this happened, the church held a disciplinary council for Russell, and they decided to excommunicate him from the church. And what that means is your name was taken completely off the church records, and so you disappear. Russell's reaction was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him to realize the seriousness of his transgressions. But I will not desert Russell, and that is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie. She's producing Angels in America this year at the college.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do. We have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there's some really deep-seated hostility toward gays? How do we reach them? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents!
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, so, what plays are you doing this year? And I said Angels in America. And they were like, Angels in America. Is that the play you did last year? The scene you did last year. And I was like, yeah. And my mom was like, are you gonna audition for it? And I said, yeah. We got into this huge argument. But the best thing I knew I had on him was, well, they had just seen me in a production of Macbeth. And you know, on stage I like murdered a kid, Lady Macduff, and like 2 other guys. And my mom, she keeps going on, she says, well, you know, homosexuality is a sin. She just kept saying that. Well, and I said, Mom, I just played a murder tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared this much for an audition in my life. Never ever. Not even close.
Not having to deal that much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, when we started working into the case and actually speaking to the people who were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And there's going to be people who hold with the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not going to listen to it, and I'm not going to put up with it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. And I've already lost a couple buddies, but I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done. Got me to Fort Collins, drew the blood there, flew it out to Michigan, and which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were just all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You were just elated, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. You're just so happy, and you think, I hope I did this service well. You know, I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. But you're just so happy. And my daughter's just bald.
And we're so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy.
We went out and got
shit-faced.
It was great. Everybody bought me drinks too, and you know, I kissed everyone who walked through the door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what part of what I just said did you not understand?
Well, get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have in mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Barucha, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county attorney's office that this will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was on and off and on. I can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100% because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I don't ever want to see them walking out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay my nickel or whatever, my small amount of tax, nickel a day to make sure that his ass stays in prison and never sees society again. He definitely never comes into my bar again.
I don't know about the death penalty. It's just too much for me. You know, one person getting killed is retribution for killing another. Two wrongs don't make it right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere with that. But on another note, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron, we just called him AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers are Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. You know, how did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? See, I don't think a lot of people will let them be their teacher, but I think it would be great if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney, docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton Envoy presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in a court of law.
Here is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you're at the fireside. So you're at the fireside by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd he go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
A queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay. How'd you meet him?
Well, some kid wanted to ride home, and I thought, well, the dude's drunk. I'll just take him home.
When did you and Russ first talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
What happened next?
We drove out past Walmart, and we got out there, and he starts grabbing my leg and grabbing my genitals. And I said, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. A fist, pistol, the butt of the gun. It was trying to figure out what happened. I had a few beers, but I don't know. It was like I could see what was going on, but it was like somebody else was doing it.
What was the first thing he said or did in the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg and he slid it up like as if he was gonna grab my balls.
When the defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone, it's the same thing.
As much as part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or it was gay panic, part of me is really grateful. Because I was really scared that in the trial they were going to try and say that it was a robbery or it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told. The truth is coming out.
Did he ever defend himself or try and hit you back?
Sort of. He had his little swings or whatever, but they weren't very effective.
Okay. How many times did you hit him inside the truck before he stopped where you left him?
Probably 2 or 3 times. 3 times with my fist and about 6 or 7 with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
What did he say?
After he asked us to stop, most all he was doing was crying.
So I'm assuming Russ kind of dragged him over to the fence and tied him up?
Yeah. I just remember Russ was laughing at first, and then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah. I told him to turn around and don't look at the license plate, because I was scared he would tell the cops. And then I asked him what it said, and he read it. That's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So I'm assuming you don't like gay people?
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I wouldn't say I hate them, but when they start coming on to me and stuff, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can I ask you one question? Why'd you take his shoes?
I don't know. So, I'm never gonna get to see my son again?
I don't know. He'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today? So I'm just gonna go into court and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No, you'll just be arraigned today.
Is he gonna die for sure?
There is no doubt that Matthew Shepard's going to die.
So what are they gonna give me? 25 to life, or just the death penalty and get it over with?
That's not my job. That's the job of the judge and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case. After well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to charge of first-degree felony murder, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury could give him the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here's some of what he said.
My son Matthew didn't look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated, and he wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, he tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son, and my hero, lost. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son, and my hero, died. 50 days before his 22nd birthday. Now, I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in the hospitals in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. And he wasn't alone. He had the stars and the moon that we used to look through with a telescope. And during the day, he had the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he had the Wyoming breeze, the ever so faint Wyoming breeze. And through it all, he had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matt's beatings, hospitalization, it's focused a worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. I'm so proud to be able to say that Matt's my son. Judy has been stated about being against the death penalty, and Matt has as well. But that's wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes that justified the death penalty, and I do too. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, it's time to begin the healing process. To show mercy for the one who never showed mercy. I grant you life, in honor of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You've robbed me of something very precious, and I'll never forgive you. I grant you life, in honor of Matthew. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Matthew, an angel with new wings, and a place a world away, can once again begin to sing. God took him in his arms today. He blessed his soul with loving care and took away his pain. His life story all would share, his memory on their hearts a stain.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes, and Mr. Shepard was crying, and that got me bawling, and everybody just...
This is all we've lived and breathed for a year. This has been my case daily, and now it's over.
Maybe now we can move on and quit being stuck, you know?
It just hit me today, the minute I got out of the courtroom, that the reason that God wanted me to find him was so that he didn't have to die out there all alone. If I hadn't come along, he would have been found for another couple of weeks at least. So it made me feel better that he didn't have to die out there all alone.
I'm glad the trial's over. I really am. Testifying was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do. But it's hard because you have a lawyer asking you questions from this angle, but you have to funnel your answer to the jury. So you kind of have to establish a sort of funneling system, you know? It's hard because I'm a natural conversationalist. So when someone asks you a question, you make eye contact with them, you look at them. But it's hard because you have to literally scoot yourself over in order to make a funneling system to the jury. But I was able to do this several times successfully over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play Pryor in Angels in America. After a performance, we spoke.
It's taken me a long time to become personally involved in the Matthew Shepard incident. It just didn't seem real. It seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew was just a name rather than an individual. I don't know, I just feel bad. For all the stuff I said before, for the person I used to be. I mean, that's why when I hear those interviews from last year, when I said all that stuff, I mean, I just can't believe I said all that stuff about homosexuals. I just can't believe I somehow thought that made you different from me.
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And since then, well, it's obviously changed. And the fact that I've really realized my role in taking my part in society. I used to want to go to school for music, but now I want to go to school for communications and political science because I have a career in political activism. I recently found out that I'm going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about my angels or any of the speaking that I've done, Matthew's like guiding me down this path. And whenever we get to a door, he opens it and he says, "Okay, next step." And if I get to be a rock star on the side, then okay.
Jonas Slonaker.
Change isn't an easy thing, and I don't think people are up to it here. But they got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved. Justice has been served. We've shut down the villains. We've sent the prostitutes on the train. And the town's cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. No. It's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. Not at a state level, anywhere. No one's passed any sort of anti-hate crime legislation or discrimination laws. Nobody. Nothing. So what's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
We all agreed that we'd meet one last time at the fence.
I've been up at that side in my limousine, okay, and I remember to myself the night he and I drove around. He said to me, "Laramie sparkles, doesn't it?" And from where he was sitting up there, if you sat exactly where he was up there, Laramie does sparkle with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue that bounced off the airport and goes tisk, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it just blows you away. Matt was sitting right there, and I could just picture what he was seeing. The last thing Matt saw were the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of material. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah was crying when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice, but that's up to how you portray us. And that, in turn, is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we got off the phone, she said,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghost write a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we come to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether or not there'd be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On our way to Denver, I took one last look out of my rearview mirror.
And I will do this. I will trust that if you write a play of this, you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could still see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.